Welcome to the UnaParent podcast, the place that delivers deeply human stories about the unapparent truths of parenting. My name is Katia Reguero Lindor, and I am your host. I am the mother of a toddler named Kalina, wife of a professional baseball player named Francisco, social and environmental justice advocate, and most importantly, I am an individual who is constantly learning, unlearning, and evolving while navigating this beautiful and complex experience that is parenthood. Join us as we debunk myths surrounding parenthood and provide an empathetic, judgment-free space for parents and parents to be. Subscribe to our channel and become a part of the UnaParent community on Instagram @TheUnaParent. We hope you enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Bienvenidos to the UnaParent podcast. Today is a very special day where months of hard work and years of internal and external conversations come alive in this podcast format. The UnaParent podcast is born. My name is Katia Reguero Lindor, and I am your host. In this podcast, I hope to share with you that which is not apparent to most, the unapparent. In this first episode, I am taking the opportunity to touch upon some of the themes and topics that will be discussed in future episodes, but introduce some of these through a personal lens. Moving forward in this podcast, we will be joined by amazing guests who will help us discuss some of these topics and share their unique perspectives. So stay tuned, give us a follow on Instagram and Spotify to catch the latest. Today we'll talk about my views on motherhood and parenthood in general, the theme of false positivity surrounding motherhood, and the concept and practice of motherhood within a patriarchal society. Okay, so a few disclaimers right off the bat. I will be more generally using the terms parents and parenthood because I know that not all parents identify as mothers, and all parents' experiences are real, valid, and important, regardless of how they identify. So please keep in mind that when I use the term mother or motherhood, it is only because I am relaying personal experiences from my reality, that being of a cisgender heterosexual woman who is married to and raising a child with a cisgender heterosexual man. But it does not mean that I am unaware or discrediting all of the diverse realities that other parents live. So that was my first disclaimer. That's very important to note. And another thing you'll notice about me throughout the episodes, particularly those in Spanish, is that I might speak Spanglish since I am Puerto Rican, and especially amongst millennials and younger generations, this is a common lingo. I know it annoys some people, including my mom, so sorry, Mom. I know you tried teaching me otherwise. But for those of you whom it does annoy, you are forewarned. I guess a lot of you might be asking yourselves why I'm doing this. There's probably a preconceived notion of what my life is like. For those of you who have been following me on Instagram, for those of you who haven't, you know nothing about me, that's great. Start with a clean slate. But I guess there is this stereotype of the athlete wife and how they spend their time. And even if we are mothers, and for those of you who are parents, you know how much it entails, what, being a parent takes. But many times stay-at-home moms to some people means that we really do nothing all day. We sit around the house and kind of just chill. And for you stay-at-home parents, this is just simply not true. I'm doing this podcast as much for myself as for others. I needed a creative, intellectual, stimulating outlet. And it stemmed from a desire to start conversations that I felt I might have needed back when I was pregnant and becoming a parent in the first few months. That was just so overwhelming, and it didn't seem like there was enough authentic conversation surrounding what parenthood is actually like, because I had nothing to prepare me for what it's like. You can prepare for labor, or you can, prepare for those of you who aren't gestational parents. You prepare the room, and you can buy all of the little, I don't know, clothes and things and toys and decorate the room. And none of that is going to prepare you for actually having a baby and a child and just raising them. So much more goes into it. And I guess I just wanted to give a little bit of myself to those of you who may gain something from listening to me and knowing that you're not alone if any of what I'm about to say resonates with you. And the imposter syndrome became so strong when I started my parenting journey. That's always present, I think, throughout life, but it just really got so much stronger. I was just questioning my abilities in everything. Was I organized enough? Was I good enough to really be a good parent? What about my personal goals? How am I going to make my child proud if I haven't achieved all of the goals I had set up for myself before becoming a parent? All of these doubts and, I don't know, mostly doubts, but also it's partly not being nice to myself, because deep down I know, that I am capable, but these thoughts just really, really frustrated me and made me want to connect with other parents to see if, they felt the same way, so I could share these feelings with them. And a lot of the times I really didn't get those conversations, because I think a lot of people think that you don't want to hear that, you just want to hear all the good stuff and everything's great and I love this. And yeah, so let's talk about my views on motherhood and parenthood in general. So becoming a gestational parent, in my case, a mom, brings with it so many complexities that non-mothers, especially men, cannot comprehend. Even when they can intellectualize it, they could never truly grasp the thousands of conflicting emotions that go on. For starters, there's the most obvious change that we go through, physical change. Our bodies change in unimaginable ways in only 9 months. But even though these changes become apparent once your belly starts showing, we are undergoing countless unapparent transformations from the inside out. Internally exchanging from the moment we find out we are pregnant before we start changing externally. Separate from the nausea, vomiting, backaches, and other aches are the numerous mental aches and transformations. From insecurities, fears, and anxieties about childbearing, then childbirth, and then actually raising children, to what seems like more vain but very real insecurities, such as feeling unsexy, unattractive, or simply put, a mess, to all of the doubts stemming from realizations about our personal/academic/professional plans and goals being on hold, to possibly some financial anxiety, and so forth. Man, do we face transformation whether we like it or not. I remember a time when I was so fearful that I would not know what to do with a baby. How do you care for a fully dependent little human? How will I know what to do? How do you bathe newborns? What if my maternal instincts don't kick in? All of these thoughts and many, many others infiltrated my brain, and let me tell you, the fears only increase after giving birth. This is not to scare you away if you haven't gone through this yet, but it is just to kind of shed light on the realities that at least I, have faced. So learning to manage these fears and not project them onto my child is a challenge unto itself. But, that is the beauty of parenting. You learn more about yourself and life every single day. So, on that note, back to the beauty of childbirth. So after X amount of hours of labor, possibly for some women after having faced complications during pregnancy or labor, you finally push the baby out. Maybe you had an epidural, maybe you had a C-section, or maybe you had a completely natural birth like I did, and felt every single excruciating pain that radiates through not just your stomach, but your back and what seems like your whole body. I never knew pain like that. But I also never knew strength like that, and I never knew love like that when I held her in my arms, still shocked at how suddenly the pain and anticipation was all over. Life truly began at that moment. Until that point in time, I had known nothing, and I didn't even know that I knew nothing, but I realized it then. I had, until that point, known nothing of physical pain and sacrifice. I had known nothing of strength and courage, and I had definitely known very little of selflessness and unconditional love. Until this moment. Only a mother's love would be selfless and strong enough to sacrifice her body for approximately 12 plus months to house you. And after birth, your body's sacrifice is not over, which we will definitely talk about in future episodes. Birth you and nurture you. And we never really go back to the way we were. We are irrevocably a new person from the moment we become parents at conception. Another topic we will dive deep into in future episodes. But never being able to go back, quote unquote, is not a bad thing. We have evolved into a new being, into who our babies need us to be, and we bravely take on life's most important job. Yes, bravely. Society may have made us believe that a woman's job is to birth and raise children, and thus bravery has nothing to do with it. It is a given, and often taken for granted, that this life-altering job, uniquely belonging to gestational parents, be performed as commonly as any other job. And so, at least Western society does not give it a label of courage, so much as one of assumption. But I am here to tell you that giving birth and raising children is nothing short of doing a superhero's job. It is hard. It is brave. It is important. The most empowered I have ever felt, and probably will ever feel, was the moment I pushed my baby out. Although some of you might not be able to experience this particular aspect of parenting, does not mean that you didn't or won't experience the unimaginable strength and love that is unique to parenting. Another incomparable moment is when you hold your baby for the first time. Nothing will ever compare. Some parents may not feel an immediate connection, and that's okay. I think I was in shock for a while and couldn't wrap my head around holding this perfect little human in my arms. When she latched on to breastfeed for the first time was perhaps the moment I realized, wow, what a miracle this is, but remained in a sort of whirlwind of mixed emotions. It definitely makes sense why women, and not men, give birth. God made women superheroes for a reason, and he also gave us the gift of forgetting so that we can do it again and again, or else I'm pretty sure humankind would be extinct. As I share a small window into my personal experiences as a gestational parent, motherhood and parenthood in general, it leads me into my next topic, which is the theme of false positivity surrounding motherhood. So, precisely because of the aforementioned assumption that women are to become mothers, that it is our jobs to raise children, it is also assumed that we will do it with little complaint. After all, it was our choice to become a parent, right? Well, hopefully, yes, it was our choice, or else we are talking about a different topic. But just because someone chooses something does not mean that it isn't extremely difficult. And it also does not mean that they have to smile through it all despite the difficulties. Being a parent is hard in every sense of the word. It is mentally, physically, and emotionally draining to the point that we often forget or don't find the bandwidth to take care of ourselves. And so we become sad, frustrated, or depressed. This does not mean that we do not love our children or our jobs as parents. See, uncommon to popular belief, full-time parents can simultaneously complain about parenthood and also love parenthood. They do not have to be mutually exclusive, and it certainly does not have to be taboo to talk about it. There is so much false positivity surrounding motherhood because of the expectation and assumption that it is a woman's job to not only perform the full-time job, but to essentially do it with a constant smile on her face, or at the very least, without expressing dissatisfaction. I am here to debunk this damaging myth that motherhood is this rose-colored, only wonderful life event. It is all of these things, don't get me wrong, but it's also many, many other things that don't get talked about enough. I think social media is a huge source that leads to dissatisfaction and incessant false positivity. Related accounts and stories where parents seem to have it all figured out and only seem happy. As I've stated, of course, happy parents are real, and we absolutely need to find ways to be happy for our own mental health and children. But it is not the only or even the main state most parents find themselves to be in. Emotional roller coasters are very real and normal. We are made to feel that we are somehow lacking if we experience anything other than positive emotions. But this is untrue. I remember talking to a couple of moms within my first year of parenting and longing for some sort of authentic venting of how hard it is. And I remember that pretty much all they told me was something along the lines of, "Oh, I love being a mom. It's so great." Or, "Oh, I was made to be a mom. This is amazing. I love this." And I am sure all of those things are true. Like, I'm sure they meant that. But I also love being a mom. And those weren't the only emotions I was feeling. And so in this longing to kind of feel, seen and connect on a way that I felt was really necessary for me, I almost felt like those interactions were ungenuine or just too automatic. Like when people ask you, "How are you?" and you give the pleasant, expected answer of "good, thanks," and you, even if a million things are wrong, you are expected to give that pleasant answer, right? You're not maybe going to give them the authentic one of, "Man, what a day I've had," and go on into like how difficult your day's been. No, you don't usually do that. And I guess it's because we were socialized to act like, nothing is wrong, even if there's 1,000 things wrong. So I experienced that with, parenting and kind of testing the waters and seeing, how many people are going to open up and really tell me, like, if they've had a tough day or, like, all of the cons of parenting, even if the pros are also part of it. But another damaging trend that possibly has always been around, but which I think social media has made more widely known, is the bounce back culture. It's so damaging. I mean, for starters, no one should care what a woman's body looks like, especially after she has gone through such an enormous physical, mental, and emotional transformation like childbirth. They should only care about what their body did and how they feel. It took 9 months for our bodies to change. And let's be honest, bodies constantly change and fluctuate. So it's probably going to take around the same time or more for us to feel slightly back to quote unquote normal. And yet this should not even be a concern. Postpartum is kind of forever. There is no like bouncing back or getting back to normal, since you will forever be in a postpartum state. And I don't mean that like literally your bodies will never like look like they weren't pregnant. That's not exactly what I mean. I just mean that if you think about the word postpartum, what that means is like after giving birth. Yeah, once you give birth, you will forever have been in that postpartum stage. So I think that the focus should be on, nurturing our bodies and our babies so that we and our babies are healthy. And I do clearly understand that this is easier said than done. Living in a society that emphasizes the physical so much, and I've struggled with that myself. But research does show that girls' body dissatisfaction is predicted by how they perceive their mom feels about her own body. So girls develop a desire to be thinner starting at age 6. How crazy is that? As someone who has struggled with body image my whole life, this is truly eye-opening and gives me a much stronger desire to heal the damaging ways I've thought of and talked about my body. It's hard, but I am trying to avoid negative comments about my body, and when I do talk about bodies, I do try to point out what bodies can do rather than what they look like. I mean, I have not perfected that by any means. It definitely takes practice and rewiring the brain to achieve this. But I don't want my daughter to have the same body insecurities I have struggled with. And so this is a constant challenge for me, but I hope to at least be better at it definitely by the time she's 6. And so I hope this resonates with some of you, and if not, I'm glad it doesn't, and you haven't struggled with any of this. But lastly, I'd like to conclude our first episode with some stimulating starting points on the topic of the patriarchy and how it affects motherhood specifically. It is no secret that we live in a patriarchal society. And yes, this affects all aspects of life. And yes, all women are negatively affected by it. But so are all men, even though not a majority is aware of this. As mentioned, I will have dedicated episodes where we dive deep into these topics. But right now, I will focus on sharing a bit on how I believe parenthood, and motherhood specifically, is affected by the patriarchy. Let's start by pointing out some of the basic and widely accepted practices that affect many women. Birth control, or lack thereof. The burden of carrying children is placed on women, but so is the burden of not carrying children. That is to say, not only are women responsible for, whether willingly or not, becoming pregnant, they're also responsible for not becoming pregnant, also whether willingly or not, despite men being the ones who actually get women pregnant, despite men technically being able to impregnate women 365 times in a year. Yes, that means 365 different women, while women can only get impregnated once every year or so. Yes, by one man at a time. The burden of birth control is still placed on women. So why isn't the burden of birth control placed on men? This is such a simple question that should be accompanied by a simple solution. And no, I do not mean condoms as a simple solution. I mean actual birth control, the kind women take, which alters hormones and many times has adverse effects on their health. The answer as to why this is the case today is simple and unfortunate. We live in a patriarchal society that perpetually places a woman's needs, desires, and health below that of men. And so, because the few attempts at birth control for men have been too uncomfortable for men to prioritize it, women continue to carry the unfair burden. I mean, clearly, society's values inform the way it prioritizes, or doesn't, women, parents, and parenting. Besides the unfair burden of birth control, there's also the lack of importance placed on extended paid maternity/paternity leave. The fact that paid maternity and paternity leave is what it is in this country reflects greatly on what society deems to be the importance of parenting, or at least that's how I see it. I mean, perhaps for some parents, going back to work can even be a relief or a boost for their mental health, and that's totally fine. And I mean, being passionate about work or a career is absolutely important and valid. And parents 100% need breaks to do things that help their mental health, emotional, and physical health. But I think in a large portion of cases, it is more a necessity to go back to work to be able to pay bills and so forth than it is the desire to leave your child at such a young age in daycare, for instance. I mean, speaking of work and things that fulfill us, the biggest challenge for me has been finding ways to feel intellectually and creatively stimulated, despite being preoccupied the entire day with a small child, and that is no easy feat. I mean, that's my priority, and yet the days become longer and more challenging when I'm not able to have some sort of stimulating outlet, and it gets harder to give the best version of myself to Kalina. I am so grateful that my sister has been able to help me with Kalina. Like that has been a godsend. Shout out Nika. That's the only way I've been able to get this podcast up and running and occasionally work out, etc. But still, the biggest fallacy I believed before becoming a parent was that I had to have everything figured out before I could be a good parent. How silly of me when I think of that now. When do we ever have everything figured out? Life is a continuous process of learning, growing, and evolving, and absolutely nothing can truly prepare you for parenthood. Like, there isn't a major in college I could have taken that would have prepared me, or a career I could have worked at before becoming a parent that would have prepared me. So, no matter how far you got academically or career wise, we're all starting from the same point of knowing nothing about parenting until we experience it firsthand. The only thing we can really ensure is that ultimately, and that's what matters, right? Our children grow up in a loving, empathetic, and accepting household. So, I hope this hasn't been too heavy on everyone, but I would like to conclude by pointing out that all of this being said, maybe what sounded like complaints, I don't know. Despite all of that, it is an honor and a privilege for me to be Kalina's mom. I would not trade this job for anything. I would like to emphasize that all of my blessings and privileges are not lost on me. The fact that I am able to have children while so many people struggle with infertility, the fact that I don't have to take a crappy job just to pay my bills and feed my child, the fact that I am a white passing Latina and don't have to face the ethnic and racial disparities in pregnancy related health complications that many women face. These are all privileges that I am grateful for every day. And perhaps that is precisely why I was driven to start this podcast. Because with all of the privileges I have been blessed with, and yet I still struggle, I guess I couldn't not try and give a voice to those of you who may be struggling silently. I have the utmost respect for all parents, especially those of you who are doing it with additional adversities and without the privileges some of us have. I really just hope to be able to lift you up as I lift myself up. Here I am, a flawed 28-year-old full-time parent of a wonderful little girl for whom I want to leave a legacy of authenticity, empathy, and truth in a world of unattainable perfectionism and egocentricity. In my attempt to achieve this, I wish to shed light on all the unapparent truths of parenting and the different yet similar realities we parents live, and to start honest, empathetic conversations surrounding parenthood. All of this while also occupying new roles in addition to being a mother and wife, trying to find ways to reach all of the untapped potential I know I possess while battling with that imposter syndrome that tries to convince me that I am not good enough to be successful. This is my raw, unfiltered truth. If any of this resonates with you, you're not alone, and this podcast is for you. Thank you for joining me. Until next time, mi gente. Gracias, and thank you for listening to this episode of the UnaParent podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe as we release a new episode at least every month with an exciting new guest. Be sure to also follow us on Instagram for all the UnaParent content you never knew you needed.